general some representative samples of the area. And we plan to do some 100-meter transects, some fish transects, as well as benthic photos. Chris also has these super cool cameras on board the Hercules that can create 3D images of the bottom. And
negative bridge.
He can go into more detail about that as well, if you want.
Just to give.
Yeah, sure. So the the cameras we have are just a set of stereo cameras that look down. They take flash photography, and as you drive on the bottom, they sort of repeat at a regular rate, and you get images that overlap. And the nice thing is, these cameras are calibrated, and they're pretty high resolution, so you can do quantitative estimation from them. So you can actually get square meters in terms of areas and things like that. And then we can try and reconstruct things like rugosity of the seafloor, roughness, and get a better sense of what's there. And then you can take some, if you get in the areas of more dense biology, you can do things like percent cover, so you get some actual numbers to back up how much, what is there, and sort of a habitat assessment. So that's sort of a relatively standard thing in marine science, especially coral reef ecology is all about habitat assessments and quantitative measures of stuff. So we're trying to take some of those ideas and do them deeper now. As we come up the slope, we'll be sort of transitioning from deep corals to mesophotic corals to, depending on how shallow we go, maybe even some photic corals. Yeah, see what we see.
And those, do I have this right that the Lagrangian drifters that you're working on can also do that sort of thing, except from the surface to mesophotic depths? Is that right? Or?
Yeah, so I didn't actually bring it on this trip, but at home I've got an instrument which is a Lagrangian float. And so Lagrange was a French mathematician, and he studied, one of the things he studied was fluid motion, and Lagrangian means to drift with the fluid. So if you take this thing and you throw it in the ocean, it sinks down toward the bottom. It's really only got one motor in it, or one actuator, so it hovers above the bottom at an altitude that you set. So you could say drift across the bottom at 3 meters altitude, and as it's doing it, it can rattle off pictures, again with a strobe light. And since the cameras it's carrying are calibrated, you can then reconstruct a 3D model and get things like coverage estimates and all the sort of same quantitative stuff you would want to get out of any image survey.
And do you control that real time, or do you just set it beforehand?
So we can do a few things with it. So the whole idea with the float was that, you know, a vehicle like Hercules is great, and it's super flexible, but it's also super expensive. And there are other autonomous robots that are rated for a few 100 meters depth, but they're also quite expensive. And they also tend to have trouble in really rough terrain. So the float idea was, let's make the simplest thing we can think of. It only has one actuator. It's going to hitchhike and get carried along with the current. So we're going to go for a free ride, but we still want to get decent pictures. And so the only job it really has is to maintain a nice altitude above the bottom, because that determines your lighting, your scale, and how your images are going to look. And so that's sort of its niche. Then we had to sort of pick its depth rating, and so divers are pretty competent between 0 and 30 meters maybe. And after 30 meters, you start getting into some physiology issues, and humans are not really meant to be much deeper than that without a lot of other tricks and mixed gases, and all of a sudden the diving becomes much more infrastructure intensive and difficult. Your bottom time is limited. And so the idea with the float is, okay, we can throw the thing out. We can get to, we say, mesophotic depths. So that's where light levels are starting to drop 50 meters and below. And we can reach corals and habitat that's not easily accessible by divers, but for a less cost than all the other infrastructure we have on a ship like Nautilus with a more fancy ROV system. There are also shallow water ROV systems, but now you still need a few people to run them. You have a vessel that's got to support it. It just becomes a bigger project.
You set this to 200 meters?
So this system you're talking about, for instance, could be deployed by a 24-foot Boston whaler, per se?
Yeah, exactly. So,
oh, that's great.
So we've done some work for sea bass assessment and in Buzzards Bay back home, and we go out all day and we deploy the thing with me, one person, and a driver, and you're in a 26-foot Seacraft or something, and zipping around the bay all day, and you huck it over the side, and you wait and bring it back. And it works out pretty well. It's fairly efficient.
Oh, that's really, really cool. Yeah.
So.
And is this what's the resolution on the imagery? Is it millimeter scale, or can you actually try? Wow, that's awesome.
So
cool.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you.
And yeah, so we've used the float lots of different contexts, but the idea is sort of good but cheap.
Yeah.
But there are some constraints. You can't control where you go.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to sort of play the currents. And so the operation is you kind of go out, you chuck it over once, you see where it went, and then you adjust where you deployed it and chuck it over again if you decide you're going to try and hit a specific area.
Hmm. How does it adjust its depth? What is it that?
So it's got actually has two moving parts in it. So it has a depth sensor and an altimeter, and so it knows how deep the water is, and it knows where it is in the water column. Okay. And then you program it and say, all right, drift for 45 minutes at 3-meter altitude. And it has two things. One is a little thruster on the side of it that can drive it down actively.
Got it. And
spin it down to depth. And then it has a piston inside of it, and we use both for energy conservation purposes. So you want the thing to float at the end of its dive, so it can call home on an antenna and you can go find it. But you don't necessarily want the motor, the thruster, fighting all that positive buoyancy the whole time it's underwater, because then you're just chewing through batteries for no good reason. So there's a piston inside of it that sucks in water and ballasts itself like a submarine does. If a submarine wants to sink, it sucks in water from the outside into some tanks that you're bringing mass from the outside of you, inside of you, and so now you're heavier and you sink. And so that's what the piston does. Cool. And so there's a little control system in there that the piston will adjust itself until it's neutrally buoyant, meaning the density of the float as a total thing is the same as the seawater around it. And so it just hangs out in the water, meaning it's not going to float or sink. And then the thruster spins up and does the sort of fine tuning control to get the exact 3-meter number or whatever your number is. And that way you're not wasting a lot of energy with the thruster all the time. And the thruster is really just spinning a couple rotations back, forth, back, forth, back. It does not really just hammering along. And that reduces our battery consumption, which lets us be out longer. So it's sort of an energy strategy. And then at the end of the day, when you say come home, the float pumps out the piston, so it makes itself as buoyant as possible. The thruster will drive it to the surface, and then it'll be on the surface for recovery.
Does it have a GPS like locator on it or something when it hits the surface, or do you just kind of have to?
So we have a couple things. We have a GPS Iridium system, so it has a little GPS receiver that says, "Oh, hey, here I am," and then it makes a phone call, a Iridium phone call that goes to a service that sends me an email and says, "Hey, here I am," every 2 minutes when it's on the surface.
Cool.
There's a RF antenna, a little thing that's about the size of a AA battery with a little 1-foot whip on it. That's a beeper, and so you can go outside and with a directional antenna see where the beeps are coming from.
Cool.
And then sometimes we can run it with another acoustic beacon, and so we can also track it that way if we have that gear on the boat, support boat as well. often we don't even bother with that. And if we're in really shallow water, 30 meters or less, we actually use a synthetic line that goes down to the float and a couple of lobster buoys. And the float can tow around the lobster buoys all day. It doesn't really matter. Then you just sit there in the boat, you watch the lobster buoys go by.
Yeah.
When you want to get it, you just go grab them and reel it in. So
wow.
that really reduces your search time. So that's the way to be really efficient. So we were out for 8 hours a day, and we got 10, 12 dives in each for 20 minutes. You know, you just keep constantly reeling the thing in, redeploying it, reeling it in, redeploying it.
Yeah, and so since this instrument's moving with the currents, you couldn't necessarily redo the same transect. You couldn't like go there year after year. Like you would have to. You're just getting a representative transect, or would it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So the philosophy behind the float was that there's two separate problems in oceanography. Going where you want to go and knowing where you are two different things.
Yeah.
Going where you want to go, or going anywhere, requires some motors and some locomotion. Yeah. Knowing where you are requires navigation equipment and sensors.
Yeah.
And so we decided to sort of skimp on the propulsion side and just hitchhike with the current.
Yeah.
But we can measure where we are just like anybody else would in terms of location. Right?
Got it.
So we can know exactly where we were and record everything, but we can't necessarily drive back to exactly where we wanted to go, like precision, repeat, perfect transects. But that's a sacrifice we're willing to make because of cost. And if you say that's really important to me, fine. Now you need to come up with a more expensive vehicle.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to decide financially in your whole operation, is this something I'm willing to pay for?
Yeah.
And I guess my idea is that sometimes you really do want to pay for that. Other times you may not.
Yep.
And so if you want to go out and just get a representative sample of what's on the bottom somewhere and say, oh, this is reasonable, the float's a really good option.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to go out and look at the same exact piece of coral for the next 10 years, it's not a great option.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's going to cost you, right? Because now you're going to need a vehicle that can do that. So that's going to be an expensive piece of coral after 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And so I think what we really want to do ultimately is work the float into monitoring programs where, say, in year 1, you go out with the float and sort of trick or treat around with it and find some interesting spots and decide, oh, is it worth coming back here with a more expensive asset? If it is, great, knock yourself out and do it.
Yeah.
But you might have learned that that really expensive asset would have been a waste of money at some of your intended spots, right?
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden it wasn't as interesting.
Yeah.
And so we really want to look at it as sort of an asset allocation tool, right? So in your early years of a project, it could be pretty good to go scouting, so to speak.
Yeah.
The other option is if you have the capability in year 1 of a project, you go out and you do a big grid survey or something quite precise and expensive and thorough. And then in years 2 through N of the project, you need to decide, am I going to go back and do that again? Well, in those years, you could go out with the float, drift it through that area, and look and compare what the float got opportunistically to what you've had before and say, is it worth coming back here or not?
Yeah.
Have things changed enough that this is now going to become worth my time to do it with the more expensive asset? And so I think there's ways of sort of looking at the whole aggregate cost of the project, right?
Yeah.
And saying, okay, this is a reasonable way of approaching it. So that's sort of been the philosophy of how or what we're trying to do to sort of put it into monitoring programs and things.
Yeah. Oh, really cool. And does this use the same strobe setup as what you've got on the Herc right now? Or is it, or same strobing capabilities?
Well,
you know, where it's got like the laser and the strobe.
We don't do the laser so much on the
Okay.
float, but we do stereo cameras. So you can do 3D reconstructions and things like that.
Got it, got it. Yeah.
We do strobe photography because that's the most energy efficient to flash strobes rather than continuous lights. But we don't, the lights are not nearly as bright as they are on Hercules. Hercules has some pretty wampin strobes. The strobes on Hercules are probably 10 to 15 times brighter than your average camera strobe that you would buy at the store. On the float we use, currently we use an average camera strobe that we rip apart and repackage. You know, it's a $70 strobe that
Nice.
Nikon, that we rip apart and repackage.
That's cool.
And again, because with the float you're trying to drive costs down.
Yeah.
So there's something nice about being able to Amazon a strobe.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
for
that's
70
pretty
bucks.
cool.
And if it dies, you just buy another one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We are looking at doing a little bit better now. LED systems have come a long way. So we are actually looking in the lab of redesigning it for LED strobes. Because energy trade-off wise, they're pretty good. And actually there's enough just with the commercial units of, LED flashlights and LED this and LED that. There's a lot of gear you can just buy, chips and low-level hardware that you can sort of buy and solder together that didn't even exist 10 years ago, right, or 5 years ago. So we can sort of utilize a lot of other people's work and cobble together something that's be pretty nice without having to spend a ton of effort on my part, because that just drives up my costs. Right?
Yeah.
But if we can sort of borrow from the flashlight industry and a bunch of other things and all the other LEDs, that's cool.
Oh, wow, yeah. That is cool.
Whoa. Super
like-
cool.
Yeah.
Hey Chris, on that
Sci-fi.
device,
It's a
when
big
it
sci-fi
works
one,
to
too.
become neutrally buoyant, so you have like an accelerometer that you're getting vertical data from, and then you're actuating a motor that drives the piston based on that. But when you first get down there, you have to make pretty gross adjustments to arrest your descent or ascent. And then you have to wait to see what happens. So do you actually change the wait time between looking at the accelerometer and looking at and actuating the piston before you repeat that activity based on how far off you are?
Yes, that all kind of happens seamlessly inside of what's called a complementary filter controller.
Mm-hmm.
Complementary filtering is a common thing in
Must be a hard
filtering and
bottom to
data
get
processing, which means you
lot
may
of-
have two
starting to get
sensors,
Doppler and altitude already.
one of which is very good at
Over 100
quick
meters.
motion sensing, and one is
Right,
good
right.
at slow
Ah,
motion
down there.
sensing.
Got it. That makes sense.
And so what we end up doing, in our system, we think about it as the thruster is good at quick motions and the piston is good at slow motions. So actually, Wendy Snyder, who's on the ship now, her
Yeah.
brother, was a master's student of mine,
Is that Will or her?
Will.
Yeah.
And so Will's master's thesis was designing that controller.
Ah.
And so
Huh.
he wrote a control system that sort of seamlessly takes what's happening with the float and adjusts the piston very slowly to make the thruster effort go to,
Yeah.
to zero average,
Right.
right? So if you're trying to hold depth and you're not at the depth you want to be, the piston's going to start moving and the thruster is going to start moving to get you there.
Ah, got
Right.
it.
And once you get there, the piston is going to be kind of slow and just catching up, but the thruster can drive you there, and then it's going to be flicking back and forth to
So
keep you there.
It's really the two things going at once.
There's two things happening at
Complementary,
once.
yeah.
But let's say the thruster had a positive bias. It was always trying to push you
Then it's
more
gonna be
down than up.
burning.
This control system realizes there is a positive bias
ahead and
on
reset
average
your
and
Doppler if you want.
changes the piston. And it'll keep changing the piston until the mean effort, the average effort of the thruster is zero, meaning it's a little up, it's a little down, it's a little up, it's a little
Right.
down.
And that if you're in shallow water, that first atmosphere, second atmosphere are really hard to maintain buoyancy in, but you get down to that, like you said, that 40-meter range or whatever.
Well, with the float, it's not too bad because we're not doing it with compressed air. So when buoyancy is really tough, like scuba diving in shallow water, because you're doing it with compressed air. So the compressibility of the air in you that you're trying to maintain your buoyancy
You can almost
with
stop at
is
30.
reasonable. So you kind of keep overcorrecting and things like that.
Right, right.
The piston system we have, it's sucking in seawater, which is
Yeah,
essentially incompressible.
it's
So we
the-
don't have that
It's
air
the same.
compressibility problem.
You don't have to worry about partial pressure.
No, exactly, right. So
Nice.
that's not a real big deal. But one thing that we like that's helpful with the float is we often use it in shallow coastal waters that have very variable salinity and sometimes steep thermoclines. And so the density can change quite quickly, just in a few meters.
Oh, right.
And
right.
so the
That,
piston
yeah.
and thruster system actually do a pretty good job of correcting for that, so we don't have to be super finicky about the ballasting of it. We can kind of get it close and chuck it in, and it'll sort itself out.
Sounds like a novel application of technologies.
Yeah, so it's worked out well.
Have you ever thought about putting a just low quality forward facing camera with like a cheap light on it, just to kind of get a general overview of what the habitat down there looks like, and see opportunistically if anything else comes and checks you out or anything? Or,
yeah, so we've put on some pretty wide cameras now. We just actually built them right before I got here, to get wider sort of plan view, but mostly down. But in the past, we have just out of curiosity chucked a GoPro or something on there in a housing, looking sideways, and we saw some really cool stuff.
Yeah, especially.
So now one thing we're looking at, there's another fellow, actually former Nautilus person, Brendan Phillips.
Hey, we made it.
There you go. A URI who's doing these cheap Raspberry Pi arrays of cameras, and so we're looking at maybe one of those. So you get this sort of 360 view sideways for fish and stuff that's off the bottom.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And then you get the down-looking stuff. So then you get sort of this really nice.
Yeah, and then that way, if if your downward-facing cameras are, it's pretty boring, you're not getting anything, but maybe nearby there's some really cool habitat you could you could know. Yeah. Oh, that's really neat.
And the side-looking cameras are often much easier for fish ID stuff. Down-looking cameras for fish ID can be challenging. Because a lot of fish look the same from the top.
Yep. Very cool. Thanks for talking about that.
Thanks for that, guys. You made my job easy.
Sure.
Anytime. Well, cool. We have a whole string of questions coming in. Everybody is excited as we are, I think, to be back on bottom. So we are diving in Ta'u. Am I saying that right, Ian?
Yeah, Ta'u.
Ta'u.
Yeah,
so as Ian mentioned earlier, that's just on the boundary of the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa and the National Park. So we're at a depth of around 750 meters or so. We just touched down, as you can see. And we're doing a bit of the work that Chris sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, those 3D modeling, taking images of the bottom and the fauna in this region, and then also collecting some biological and geological samples as we come into them. So we do have a couple of new viewers here. If you're watching,
that's good.
Crew's getting the cameras white balanced and situated, and sort of just making sure everything is ready to go before we move along.
That's good there, bud. All right, I'm going to go ahead, black balance the camera. This is going to make it go dark for about 5 seconds. This is on purpose. Good black balance and white balancing now. All right, good white balance and coming out. Thanks so much. Full wide.
You all done?
You're all done.
All
hey,
right.
Ed?
Yep.
I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
I understand white and black balance, but what's with the red, green, blue on the arm there?
Red, green, blue is a legacy technique I use from working with an ROV.
Chris, would you like to start moving towards north to the next point, like E3, E2, all the way to E3?
Yeah, let's just start going, and then we want to find any hard targets that come up in the sonar. So just
it's basically a checksum.
And outcrop, anywhere there's going to be stuff.
So the bearing on 010, almost north.
Sure. Yeah, I think just head up and keep an eye on the sonar as you go.
Okay.
So Ian,
would you like to do some reset, or we are fine? I think they looks fine to me.
It's up to you.
Oh, little fish down there to the left.
Okay.
Been sitting there a while. It's probably good.
it's possible that the colors could go out since I've never been down
Okay, so we'll do a
here.
reset.
Yeah.
and I don't know what it looks like. We have red, green, and blue there in that order, just as a checksum, so we can make sure our colors haven't
Okay.
I
flipped
gotcha.
on us. And it's possible on
Done.
when you do have an error in your color channels that they actually get inverted. So you look at those and it'll be blue, green, red.
Got it. Thank you.
So I'll get the ship to move like in 10 meter steps
And
towards the heading. Once you're happy.
green stays the same because that's where our luminance information is.
Okay,
And we
let's
only
go.
keep
Bridge,
blue and
this is
red
nav.
for color.
Can we get the ship moved on bearing 010, 10 meters, please?
So we have a couple of people
Yes, sir.
writing in who have never joined us before. So welcome to you guys and gals.
Thank you, Bridge.
First time caller.
First time caller, welcome, welcome. So to give you a little bit of a rundown, as cool as it would be to be in those vehicles that you're seeing on the screen, we are actually located on the ship. So we're sitting on top of the EV Nautilus in a control van, actually looking at the bottom of the ocean in much the same way that you are. So
Fish.
that top,
Fish.
hey, little fish.
Coming in.
So we're equally as excited as you all are as well.
Leaf.
A leaf.
Leaf.
Leaf. It's
Leaf.
not a fish.
Leave me alone.
Good one. So
That's a
No, it wasn't.
oh,
Don't
that
even
was
try.
so bad.
Dude, there's
So
a
bad.
We'll never
So
catch him.
yeah. So that top left stream that you're looking at, that is Hercules. Bob can tell you a lot more about Hercules than I ever would be able to. He's our Herc pilot.
What did you want to know about Hercules?
Just like, what is a Hercules?
Oh, man.
It's a remotely operated vehicle. So I'm driving it with some joysticks like a video game.
And it's
But
a,
it's not a robot.
And I don't earn points.
And there is no, yeah, don't get another life. Is that
No
an
more-
urchin
no
right
extra
there?
lives.
What is that little star
Yeah.
Oh,
information?
cool.
Zoom in.
Yeah.
Find it?
Crinoid, maybe?
Bridge, this is
Covered
nav,
in
another
sediment?
Crinoid.
Huh.
Yeah, looks like a crinoid.
20 meters.
I've seen a bunch of little
On
fish too,
same
but haven't
bearing,
really been able to
010,
get a
please.
good
Yeah, I've seen those.
ID on them.
Partial
Okay.
still.
Zoom out.
Coming out.
So you'll see with Herc,
Right
we've
into the rope.
obviously got this
Yeah, copy.
pretty cool camera equipment that Ed, I'm sure, can go into way more detail as well. We have a grabby arm and some storage systems to
We'll
collect
keep the
those
ship moving on the steady steps.
biological samples and geological samples as we see them. And then in that top right-hand quadrant, you'll notice a different point of view. So that is Argus looking down on Hercules. So we have these two different perspectives that sort of give us this, you know, looking down, seeing very close up. And then, of course, Argus allows us a better understanding of sort of the environment that Hercules down below is in. And we are off the coast of Ta'u, so we had wanted to dive into Vailulu'u yesterday, which is an active underwater volcano system, but as many of you mentioned, we did run into a bit of weather, so we're operating sort of based on weather and time constraints, which is why we're here now.
So, Maddie, have you ever heard the little factoid, which I always am surprised that people find this interesting or surprising?
All right, hit
that
me.
2/3 of the volcanoes on Earth are underwater.
I did not know that, actually.
Really? But
yeah.
how much of Earth is underwater?
I mean, yeah, I suppose
I
that
mean,
makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like doy.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
it's interesting because when you think of volcano, you think of,
You know them all.
yeah,
Yeah.
on land,
Yeah.
you know, spewing lava.
They do the same thing underwater.
They do the same thing underwater. And I mean, I guess we only know so many of them, right? I'm sure there are
Oh, yeah.
tons
Yeah.
and tons of volcanic features that we just have no idea even exist. Yeah, all right. We have a lot of new newbies here to Nautilus, and a lot of them found us through that squid video that was published last night.
Where was that imaged at? That was on the transit from Honolulu to Samoa?
Yeah, I believe it was in Kingman Reef,
Okay.
Jarvis Seamount
Yep.
area. Yeah. Yeah, so it's
What's that?
a mangled, I can't pronounce it.
Can you zoom in on that?
Yeah, what am I zooming on? Which one?
It's gone.
The lump is
Oh,
thick.
it's a little critter.
It's gone?
Yeah,
The
it was
one in the
just-
water column?
Yeah, it was to the right.
It was a
Is it a rock? Yes, it's a
That?
rock.
You want to snap?
Yeah.
Zzz,
Oh, it's like a dark patch.
Some lump of coal.
Yeah, it's from Christmas.
that was your present.
Yeah.
Bridge, this is Nav.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked it out yet, the mangledy squid that we found,
Very cool squid.
a very
March
cool
along
squid.
quicker.
What's the coolest thing is this is the first time it's been captured on video alive. So it was first described in 2007. Researchers have
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
picked
we can-
little
yeah,
pieces here and
we're-
there about
we're
the
gonna take
squid,
the photo
smaller
already.
specimens, but this is the first time that anyone has seen it interacting in its natural environment alive. So it's very, very cool. It's an interesting and unique squid as well. So I definitely encourage y'all to check out that video. It's on nautiluslive.org if you haven't seen it already. All right, cool. We have tons of new viewers. This is super exciting.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome everyone. All right, let's take a quick look at the map and see
Yeah.
where in the world you all are coming from.
Let's see if I've been to any of these places.
All right.
Do you
so
travel a bit?
I do, yeah.
Okay, let's
yeah.
see if we can knock these out.
Yeah, all right. So we have
US.
the US, I've been there.
Yep,
The UK, I've been there.
yep,
Canada, been there.
yep.
Denmark, never.
No,
Been to Germany,
yep,
never Australia.
yep,
New Zealand, though, that's a new one.
Uh,
Netherlands,
yep.
haven't been to Portugal
Nope,
or Puerto Rico
yep.
or Poland.
Almost, but not yet.
Never been to Norway.
Been to New Zealand, not Norway.
Been to Japan.
Yep,
Not Ireland. I could see Ireland from
Yeah.
across the way, though.
just came back from Ireland.
And I've been to Spain and American Samoa.
Ah, I've not been to Spain.
It's beautiful.
It's on the list.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And American Samoa, Talofa, we're operating just off of the coast. So it's really exciting, of course, to see folks joining in from right where we are.
I renamed my computer after the little factoid you gave me about the oarfish.
What was that? What did I
That
say?
The Japanese call it messenger from this sea god's
Yeah,
palace.
yes, that is
Yeah.
such a good one.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, so the time that it takes to get down to the bottom obviously depends a lot on how deep we're going. So just last week we were in search of the Samoan Clipper. We were operating at a depth of around 3,200 meters. So it took us a couple hours to get down to the bottom. Here we're at around 750 meters, so it took us less than an hour to get down. So it really sort of depends on the conditions, how deep we're diving.
That big old shrimp down there.
I think so.
Yeah, there's a shrimp. Ed, would it be very
Zoom-
hard to zoom in?
Zoom on that shrimp.
Yeah.
I think I got it. Coming in. Holding.
Hey, nice.
Shrimpy.
Wow, good one.
Very cool.
I'm gonna let Bob bounce back up, maybe. Oh, there we go.
Hey, shrimpy shrimp.
Hello.
Doesn't it look like a
Nice
puppy
shot.
dog, like when
Just
you're
keep
holding it?
running.
Yeah, above water and they're pretending to swim.
He runs fast though.
Oh, beautifully done.
Oh, wow.
That is so cool.
And away he goes.
Just keep swimming.
Ed's killing it at the focus.
Yeah.
I only know
Yeah.
one person that can ID like every shrimp on the planet.
Oh,
Oh,
All right.
he's going to
See
do
you,
some
bud.
maintenance on our camera. All right, full wide.
All right. Chris, what's our plan for how long we will be down today?
Try and entertain ourselves toward midnight. Well, we basically have 2 transects we might do up this hillside. So the first one here,
We start moving?
and then there's a second one we
keep
back
going.
down, and
Don't
we'll have to
stop
check
on
our
my
progress.
No.
And then we'll have to really just keep an eye on the weather
In fact,
through the evening. And
the ship was struggling until now.
I don't mind doing this during the day, but I don't want to do this overnight if it's going to be on the edge. So
Right.
we'll be looking at between 8 and midnight, really deciding if we're going to stick it out for the night or not. We also might run out of real estate because at some point we're going to end up on the beach.
Right.
Looks like a good beach to end up on.
Of all the beaches.
I've always wanted to see this national park.
Ave was saying this, Ian, you probably know, one of the beaches over on this island is deemed as one of the most beautiful in the world.
Oh yeah, that's over on Ofu, I believe. So this is Tu'u.
Okay.
Yeah, that yeah, Ofu has an absolutely spectacular white sand beach. It's in the national park there. Some incredible shallow water coral diversity in there too. There's also been a lot of research done in the lagoon there on coral resilience in the face of climate change. Some of the pools there heat up really hot due to lack of circulation, and corals have adapted to survive in these extreme temperatures. And so we've had a bunch of researchers from around the world sort of use that area as a living laboratory to learn about why these corals are able to survive at these extreme temperatures, and use that information to help preserve other coral reefs around the world for generations to come, hopefully. So
There's another shrimp down there.
This is a stick thing. There's a twig. Zoom in on that.
Yeah,
What is
coming
that?
in.
What is that thing? It's a walking shrimp?
It's like a stick and a spark plug. That's a stick, and that's not a spark plug. Ian, did you know that Mary on our team, her hobby is visiting national parks?
wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Has she? How many? Do you know how many she's been to?
I'm going to guess 40.
She's on in her 40s, I think.
Wow,
Yeah.
cool.
And by the end of the summer, I think that'll be 50. She
Very
plans
cool.
trips just to see specifically how many of our fantastic national parks she can get to.
Awesome. Yeah, I believe National Park of American Samoa is considered to be the second
Looks like
most
a
remote.
coral coming up.
Um,
Coral.
First
Yeah,
most remote.
Maybe.
The first
Oh.
most remote being. Oh wow.
Ooh. What's
Oh.
that?
Coral?
Is
Yeah,
that
but
a,
how?
Let me guess,
Is it-
Midway?
Cool.
a
Zoom
Dr.
in.
Seuss spiral
Coming in.
coral?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Wow.
If that's a
That
coral,
is super cool.
it has to be hard bottom.
Yeah, it's hanging on to something. All right, ready?
Yep.
Coming all the way in. See all the bits.
Oh, cool. Do we have an idea of
Hold
maybe
on
what
just
kind
a
of coral?
Is that a
Yeah.
bamboo coral?
I don't know.
Turn that down.
You can see there's
Can we look at the base later?
Yeah, coming right there.
I think
It
it is
looks
a,
like a bamboo coral,
I
but
think it's a bamboo coral.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
the banding there.
Yeah, it's just that Ophroid hanging onto it that keeps it there.
It's its little anchor.
Yeah, I got you, buddy.
how? I don't understand.
Good.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Hey, you want to zoom out, Ed?
Yeah, coming out. Scooting.
Those guys are pretty old, so that could have been on a substrate and then sedimented in after.
So Ian, the most remote national park is up like by Midway or something?
I believe it's Gates to the Arctic. It's considered the most remote.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, but we're pretty remote out here, that's for sure. Particularly the park units that are in the Manua Islands, which comprise Ofu and Tu'u and Olasenga.
And we are also just off of the coast of Swains Island, which is super remote as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredibly remote out there.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, part of the marine sanctuary. Not a park.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But
We still care about it.
yes, we absolutely care about it.
I'm still going to put that in my bucket list check off.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a little fish.
And another stick or something on the bottom.
Man, I wish it would, oh,
Oh, come on.
really hard to get an ID on these guys. See that?
Yeah, so Ian, you're a resident fish
Well,
guru, huh?
for yeah, for at least for shallow water species.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But I'm trying the best I can on these deeper guys.
All right, here's another one.
I'm going to try and zoom on this guy.
Yeah, I'll just keep them in frame with a little buffer. How's that sound?
Ooh, yeah, there you go.
Oh, psych.
He heard
He
me.
says he's not going to comply.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Bob, how does Hercules propel itself? I mean, how is it scooting along here?
So Hercules is what they call a hydraulic vehicle. So the thruster motors and the manipulators and everything are all hydraulically driven, hydraulic motors. Some ROVs are electric powered, have an electric motor. We just have one big hydraulic pump that runs all our functions. The advantage of the hydraulic vehicles, it's simpler. It has less electronics. But the bad thing is it makes a lot of racket.
Oh, I see.
Fish on the right, just out of frame.
What's this thing right here?
Keep going right.
We've got a little orange thing in the...
Right there.
Can you zoom in on that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to get in the dust here.
Yeah, we're going
Right.
to wash him out.
Okay.
You got a little peek.
Yeah.
Oh, there.
Oh, that's not too
Hey,
bad.
he's still there.
Yeah. But
Yep.
yeah, I have to back up and it's going to be all
Yeah,
dusty.
when we back
Yeah.
up.
So that leads into this next question is, do the thrusters ever disturb sediment as we're propelling along?
No,
Never.
no, they never do.
It's really bad if you're moving along and you try and stop.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yep,
man.
you're bringing
It's
like a
pressure wave.
along
Oh,
with you.
no, right.
What's
And
this
then
guy?
Yeah, what's
Ooh.
Anemone and a,
And a jelly?
That looks like your Venus flytrap.
Venus
Yeah.
flytrap.
Nice. That's awesome.
Stop.
Yep.
That exists?
Yeah.
Does it work the same way as like a land Venus
Yeah.
flytrap? What? I'm giving this guy a 2.5. I've never seen this before. This is so cool.
Seen,
You didn't watch our Gulf of Mexico dives.
they're seen quite frequently.
Are
Yeah.
they really? Wow.
Yeah.
I believe one of the watches saw one of these in Swains, right? I think.
Strange thing is they're normally facing like kind of into the current, but not these guys.
Is this the current we're seeing kind of wash over
No,
it?
that's us.
Oh, that's us. Okay.
Yeah. Hello, and then you can see their deadly center.
Oh, it's scary.
Okay, we got to get trucking though.
Yeah,
Okay.
coming out.
Very cool.
Just full wide. Bump in once we get moving.
Where can one apply for this job? That is a great question. One of the things that makes Nautilus so cool is that it has an amazing education and outreach program. So I am a science communication fellow. My job is specifically to talk to you all. We have many interns. We have ROV
Substrate.
pilots, scientists. So really bringing together all different people from many different backgrounds. One way to check that out is to head to nautiluslive.org, and you can click on the education tab for starters and get a little bit more information about where to start.
Well, just moving up slope here, looking for targets of opportunity, whatever they may be. We're moving along a pretty good clip, so not a lot of time to stop and smell the roses, but
Looks like there's a little, yeah.
You want to zoom in on that, Ed?
Yeah, coming in.
Animal, mineral, or vegetable?
Not a Hawthornian.
Looks like a log.
Stick or stone. I'm going with none of the above. Coming out.
Okay.
Watch it swim away.
We gotta get going.
There's full wide.
We need to
leave that
move
there
ahead
for shift
to
change. Get a little headway to hand it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's it for the 8 to 12 shift. I'm so sad to leave already.
I know, it's quick.
I
I think
know.
it's close to being dialed in at
So
35.
we've got our 12 to 4 coming
I
in
didn't really
hot.
stop and like get it all the way dialed in.
And we'll be back soon.
Seems to be flying good.
Video's off comms.
More Venus flytrap anemones.
Cool, man.
So we keep moving.
4 watch is on watch.
We are steaming towards, so it's not just steps, it's steaming towards there.
Roger that. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Sup?
So,
Hey, group.
Hey, pals.
How's it going? Is that Peyton?
Hey.
Hey, you're awfully quiet.
Hold on.
We're
This
now.
first 49 seconds of watch.
What do you think about Veliactus for the ID on these
you get ready to zoom on that, Anthony?
Venus flytrap? Sure, if
Yeah.
you don't mind. I'm just really curious.
Let me know.
This is where the stuff's going to be living.
No, we've been seeing a bunch of them now. Although these are different up here, but
Go ahead and zoom in on that.
Thank you, guys.
Ooh.
Come back here.
There you go.
Looks like maybe some coral up there on the left too.
Are we just looking for anything biological, or are we specifically looking for something?
You're right. I think that is a. Those look like polyps to me.
Looking for everything.
Everything.
Zoom in on that, Anthony.
Everything?
Yeah, there's a little red coral there.
Nice.
Some big polyps on that one.
What's
Yeah.
going on with that
on the
anemone
left.
right there?
Wow.
Yeah, there's an anemone on the left as well.
There's a lot of like mucus nets here too. Yeah, so some anemones will sometimes.
Oh.
Oh.
Ooh,
Hey, look
at
at
that.
shrimp.
There's a shrimp.
I wonder if that's the same guy we saw earlier.
Roger that. Yep. How fast is the ship moving?
I'm gonna say that
Roger that.
coral was probably Octocoralia.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Agreed. So we're only, what, just under 700 meters depth?
Yeah, we're at 744 right now.
Nice.
Oh, look at the size of this guy.
Wow, what's that straight ahead?
What's our ultimate goal here?
That is that an anemone?
To see as much stuff as possible, or be able to stop and look at stuff?
Whoa.
Can you zoom in on that?
Yes, please.
Scott.
Zoom in on that. Yep.
Cool.
What is that?
That looks like a very large anemone.
Wow.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Why is it so much larger than all the others? What species is that?
Working on the ID. 1 second.
Wow, that is gorgeous.
Very large tentacles.
Full wide.
Roger, full wide. Hey, we'll store up some food for him.
Very cool.
We're getting some waves.
Okay.
I would very tentatively ID that as Liponema species.
Liponema.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Hana.
So shall it be known.
Are you on SPL, Hana?
I don't think she is yet.
Don't think she is.
Hana.
Are you on SPL?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, now
Okay,
I can. So yeah, what's our objective right now for things to
So
look at, sample, or?
Yeah, we'd like to do surveys if we see anything of this. It's pretty barren. Can I see the map, please, just to see where we are location-wise?
Yeah, do you
on
want
the
to
dive track plan?
pull it up?
Yeah, please. It was up just a minute ago, but it switched.
It should be on
Here, let me help.
hype plan.
Okay. Oh, there it goes. Okay, I just got it up. So we're still headed to E2.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question coming in
So
about
we're headed to E2. Do you want me to zoom out a little?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
why we're moving so quickly.
Doesn't
There's
look like there's much here.
not much to see. And this is a relatively short dive as well.
We have the ship and the ROVs moving kind of at a constant speed right now.
Okay.
I'll need to slow it down if we want to stop and look at some stuff, but
Okay. How fast are we moving?
Like that dark thing in the middle.
It's traveling an average of about 0.5
Yeah,
knots.
that's interesting.
Okay. Okay.
Can I zoom?
Zoom in.
Cool.
Yeah, zoom in, please. Oh wow.
Ooh.
Or if we just want to kind
Ooh.
of keep
That
going
urchin?
until we
Urchin,
get
yeah.
to like this ridge.
That's a big urchin.
Like,
Wow.
to E2 or above where there might be more interesting stuff.
Norel, you want to try to get an ID on that?
Sure, let me look into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we're just gonna keep moving then. Let me know if we are gonna stop
Forward.
and want to see something. Awesome, thanks.
Great question about how often do we see creatures we've never seen before, and the great part about that is we switch.
So again, on this dive, we would like to conduct some fish transects, some benthic transects. If we run into an area where there's a relatively high density of organisms. Right here looks pretty barren. So I've seen a couple of anemones. I think that last one was an urchin.
Yep,
like an urchin,
looking like an
not sure
urchin.
the species.
Looking like Echinothuridae, Spirosma.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great question about how we can ID all these organisms. We have a guide. We have a little cheat sheets, and the great part about that is somebody asked earlier, how often do you see creatures never seen before? And the answer, I think quite a few of us haven't seen quite a few of these organisms before. So the guide is quite helpful.
For sure.
We also have Peyton.
Also using guides, though. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on any deep sea creatures, so.
That was my plug for you, Peyton.
Is that another urchin in the middle? Looks like it.
Looks like it. You can zoom in on that, Anthony.
Hello.
Looks like the same one.
No, it's different.
Or, yeah, same species.
Oh, right. Got it.
We also have scientists back on shore who can join us remotely, and if there's questions about some of the geology or biology, things that we're seeing, they can provide their input.
Okay.
Question coming in, have you ever come across a shipwreck? And the answer to that is yes, but I'm pretty sure the only times we've come across those we've been looking for.
What's the shallowest depth Hercules can go?
Are we going to find out today?
We very well could, which is why I'm asking.
Let's push the limits.
Well, we've got Argus.
Well, we got a 30-meter tether, and we want Argus to be, probably around 20 meters underneath the hull.
Oh, okay, that's plenty. Okay. Because so if we make it to the end of the tentative dive track, we would end around 260 meters deep.
Oh, yeah, that's
What's
fine.
that on the left? It's a little dark.
Osborne Bank stuff we did with the caves earlier this
I know
year.
what that is.
We were in 80 meters of water.
What is that on the
Can
left?
we check it out?
Yeah.
Okay.
As soon as he turns a little bit, I'll zoom in.
Oh. Can we get a zoom in on that
Yeah.
organism on the
zoom in.
left?
Ooh,
Is it on the floor? It almost looks like it's floating. Oh no, it's definitely on the floor.
Huh, it looks like there's something on the other side.
See.
What
Or
is
is that
that?
the world's largest sea cucumber?
Peyton thinks it's a snail. A sea snail. So purpley and blue.
I say that because it looks like maybe
What
the
in the
mantle is
world?
covering over it, and you can
What
see
is
two
that?
antennae.
Oh, hello, it's
Oh,
moving.
it's moving.
Ah.
Are we moving it?
We're moving it. Oh no, sorry, buddy.
Oh.
Oh, no.
Swept him off his foot.
He got a
Here,
look.
you got a good
Let's
view
get a
of the
look.
underside.
Underside,
There you go.
yeah.
Might be a sea
We
slug,
fed him.
actually.
Let's have a look. I'm gonna try to find out.
We just messed up his day.
For what?
No, we just had
Did we
to
get
ride
some
him
good
aside.
grabs?
A few.
He's going to tell his friends that, and they're not going to believe him.
These aliens came.
This really bright alien came and knocked me off the bottom.
It didn't even have to touch me.
Hey, Kim from Norway.
There's a
Thanks for
fish to the
joining.
right. You want to zoom in on that when I get ready here?
Yep.
Oh, on the floor there? Is
Yeah,
that?
on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, barely can see.
Good eye.
Good eye, yeah.
What is that?
It's
Hey, buddy.
It's not a
sort
fish.
of fish.
Chillin'.
Very fish shapey.
That looks like, no, that's
He's-
a fish.
Yeah.
It's totally sitting down there. Wow.
Hey.
It's akin to the tripod fish.
Huh. It's very calm.
Should I give him some thruster wash?